Good evening, Richmond, and welcome to week 5 of our expose of American-style communism. I'm Craig Johnson. I want to welcome you all. We want to say thank you to the fine folks at Comcast and Verizon that make this broadcast possible, as well as our fine gentlemen that are working the booth in there, our engineers and producers. So we're going to jump right into where we were last week. We have been dealing with American-style communism, and I've been sort of giving you all some definitions to help break the mental ice that we sometimes have when we hear this word communism, as we've discussed in previous weeks. And for those of you who have been with us before, forgive me, but we need to cover this ground for perhaps some of our new viewers. And these words like communism are accurate, first of all, whatever type of ism you want to put on it, communism, socialism, fascism. You could even use the American equivalent of crony capitalism. What they all have in common is they have a need for an elite that have control over the levers of government to favor the people in power. And as the food chain goes down the line, they will favor those that are part of the apparatus. And they're not going to favor those that believe in a different ideology. Now, here in America, that different ideology would be free markets. And so when free markets produce competition, and what communism, socialism, all these other isms have in common is the cementing in place of the elite up at the top. And so no new blood is possible to come in barring any type of armed revolution. And that's certainly what here in America people want to avoid. As a matter of fact, people want to avoid it so much that these agitators, they agitate, and they have with them a silent threat of physical action. They are very menacing type of people, even when what we think of as simple trade unions are actually sometimes not quite so simple. But even when trade unions strike, quite often there is either actual violence or the threat or the intimidation that there may be violence. And this is something that the left side of the aisle uses quite effectively. And the average, everyday, ordinary American who just thinks that we live in the greatest country and that somehow this great country sprung up like mushrooms and it's going to be here forever. We just need to sort of be caretakers of it, tinker with it around the edges, and all will be well. Well, quite naturally, those that want to fundamentally transform America, they are always on the attack. They're always planning. They're always the aggressors. And, we who are the majority in the country, some are intimidated, some are unconcerned, some are just selfishly living their own lives and actually literally give no thought to any of this. And so it's a recipe for disaster. And so this is where we are. We have so much wealth, so much complacency. Even people that are in this country classified as poor, by world standards, they would be middle class, according to every metric in which you can describe the creature comforts of a life. Square footage of living area, things like vehicles and modern conveniences. These people have television, cell phones, access to the latest and the greatest in medical technology, access to in education if they would so desire. And yet and still, these communist, socialist, fascists, these left-wing bullies, they make this subset of America feel that they are just so oppressed. They keep them ingrained with anger and hatred, and the anger and the hatred just spews forth in spite of the relative comfort in which they live. And many of these people don't contribute anything. Many of them are part of a family that for several generations has not contributed anything. And so when we see true poverty as we see in a lot of third world nations where you can count the ribs on the poor person, in America, if there's anything you're going to count on a poor person, generally it's going to be rolls of fat. It's certainly not going to be ribs. And so, but what this communist ideology does is, you can sum it up with a simple statement about leadership and about those that come with intentions of conquering. And that is simply that conquerors divide, leaders unite. And so what I've been doing over these 6 weeks, next week is our last week this year. And a part of the goal over these 6 weeks is to inform people, and we're going to put the phone number up a little bit later on in the program, and to be able to have you, the viewer, participate in the program if you so desire. But we're trying to educate people to understand the gravity of this situation that we're in, that just because you have your modern accoutrements, you have your cell phones, you have your cable television that you're watching this broadcast on. We have a modern society. We have specialization where you can just go and perform a task and get a paycheck and just participate in this wonderful society. And societies around the world are not all like this, and it has not always been this way. And we today have taken it for granted. And these people that are of the left, and again, I use the term communism, and one of the reasons I prefer that particular term over any of the others is Lenin put together the socialist and the communist ideology perfectly in saying that, let's just take, for example, the government health care law, which I call Obama scam. Other people call it Obamacare. Well, Obama scam is universal health care, and Lenin himself said, okay, this is the same Lenin that killed millions, by the way, that got, the Bolshevik Revolution, got all this started. And he said universal health care is the keystone to the archway of socialism. And the purpose, he further stated, the purpose of socialism is communism. And I think last week we had a caller that wanted to take issue, perhaps it was week before last. We had a caller that wanted to take issue over just definitions. What does this mean? And you have these technical definitions. And a lot of times I talk to young people, particularly college students, and they will say, well, communism is beautiful on paper, and they believe in the paper concept of it. And they say, well, it's just that the people always mess it up. And these kids, they just can't figure out, well, who's going to implement it? There are no angels going to come here from heaven are going to implement it. There's no robotic alien is going to come here and implement it. Who's going to implement it? Human beings, okay? And so human beings are imperfect. And so any system you put out there is going to be imperfect. And I'm trying to make the case for free markets. And many people have an animus towards what they term capitalism, and I'll be fine with that. Even if you want to say, well, use those terms interchangeably. Let's just say capitalism, free markets. But I mean a type of capitalism where the emphasis on free markets, not purchase a congressman, purchase a senator, have an inside track that no one else has. That's a violation of the rule of law. All those things, those are illegal. They happen every day, but they're illegal. And so you have the people that want to tear the country apart and complete what Barack Obama himself termed. He didn't coin the phrase, by the way, but he famously used the phrase 5 days prior to his inauguration. He said, we are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. And see, the thing about it that I find so galling, and one of the things that drives me with the passion that I have, whether I'm on the radio, here with you on Comcast, or on my internet broadcast, or out giving a public speech, one of the things that drives me with such passion, folks, is the simple fact that these people, this is no longer any type of a secret. All right. It once was a time when communists somewhat kept a low profile, had to sneak around. I went to a rally in Washington, D.C., a Glenn Beck rally. And this was either '09 or 2010. And the communists had a rally the following weekend. And when we left the mall in Washington, the place was spotless. It was clean. The whole thing was orderly, other than when Al Sharpton and a bunch of thugs came down to try to intimidate us. No one took the bait, fortunately. But the communists, when they had theirs, to my surprise, the lead name in the organizing in the committee of the various groups that organized their rally, the Communist Party of the United States of America. So here in the age of Obama, these people are out from the shadows. They're no longer using a front. I mean, let me just give you some of these names that the communists have used. They always have some innocuous sounding name that has something to do with peace. Okay. And they never called themselves communists in the past, but now all of a sudden, they're no longer ashamed to call themselves communists. And so they're just totally out in the front, and they're just totally not 100% out front, but there's enough of it out there that if we had an honest media, they could be totally and totally exposed. And so even this health scam that I have dubbed Obama scam. And I hope that as the next two elections roll around here, that there will be more and more conservatives, Christians, libertarians, Republicans, people that have an interest in having a coalition to restore this nation. I would hope that many more of them would have the nerve to just not refer to this communistic takeover of 1/6 of the American economy in a very, very important segment of the economy. It's life and death here. Very important. That they would just call it Obama scam, not call it Obamacare, which is a lie. Obama does not care. Not call it the Affordable Health Care Act. It's not affordable, and it's not about health care. It's about control. And so, once you give the government control, the next thing they want control of all the food production. The next thing they're going to want control of all manufacturing. Next thing they're going to want control over all housing. And in all these areas, they're working bit by bit like a shark that will bump its prey prior to attacking it. They are testing to see what they can get away with. How much fight does the target have in it? And this is how predators function. Lions do something similar. They'll focus. They'll sit there and they'll analyze and see, okay, which one's old, which one's maybe a newborn, which one might have an injury, which one can't fight back, which one can't run fast enough, and they'll lock their gaze on that target, and off to the races they go. And so this is what's going on. These people, they're testing the resolve of this nation. And they have their claws in the healthcare sector. And there's a handful of patriots, Tea Partiers, conservatives, libertarians, Christians, a handful. There's not enough to defeat this Leviathan, but there is a handful. And with God's help, that handful will be able to save the day. Many people don't know that only about 30% of the nation wanted to break from England. And 30% were loyal to England. And of course, 30%, well, back then folks didn't have the head on backwards, but whatever the equivalent of head on backwards, okay, you had 1/3 that just didn't care. They were so wrapped up into their selfish little lives, and they could go with the flow either way. If America remained a colony of England, fine. If it became independent, fine. They were just going to do their thing and sort of go with the flow and just look out for self. And so here we have in modern times, you have a very, very similar breakdown. And so you're going to always have the apathetic, you're going to always have the greedy, you're going to always have the opportunistic, and you're going to always have the patriot. You're going to always have the man and woman of God. That person that says, I have children, I have grandchildren, I have my seed that I've not seen, that I'll never see, they'll be born long after I'm dead. I'm going to do this for them. You've always had that type of a person. At the Thermopylae, 300 men died fighting tyranny, and they knew that they were all going to die. But they knew that, well, if we could just occupy the enemy for a few days or a week, it would give our people time to get away and survive. And Greece survived. Those 300 died, but Greece survived. Okay. And as Greece survived, Western civilization survived. And so this is what animates me in this fight against communism. And this is exactly what it is. We have all these politicians. They're so cowardly, won't even use the word communist. And so they're just afraid. And sometimes I talk to them or tell them about this program I'm doing here. And we're talking about American style communism. Oh, you can't say that. You can't call it that. Well, the media, they're going to eat you up. And so they don't want any parts of this. They don't want any parts of this. But if the nation is able to be saved, someone is going to have to sit in those seats. Someone's going to have to do it. And not everyone's going to be worthy. There are days when every man or woman wonders, are they worthy to do what it is God has asked them to do? Even Moses said, no, Lord, I can't do it. I'm not articulate. I don't speak well. I'm not worthy. And God said, no, you're the man. And if you can't speak well, we have an answer for that. You hire your brother Aaron. He speaks quite well, but you the man. Okay. But that's just sort of goes with the territory when you have these David and Goliath situations. And so throughout history, you've had them. History is full of evidence that a small group that's totally committed, that has faith in God, that will fight to the end, can overwhelm the odds and succeed. History is replete with evidence of this. And so here we go again. We're in this crisis era where it seems that the forces of communism, American style, are just crushing the individual every which way you look. These people use racism, sexism, homophobia. They will use anything. And 24/7, they never, ever let up. They never let up. And so the trick is, and this is why, one of the things that I do, many of you will perhaps recognize my voice, although I'm a little hoarse. I hope you recognize my voice. That I do the talk radio program called The Really Real Deal on 990 AM WLEE. And just had a program today from 5 to 6. Had a pretty interesting program. And dealing with addressing some of the racial issues in the nation. And one of the things that I try to do is keep it lively, have an entertainment angle to it, just so that people will be interested. And there's so much competition for your attention out here. And folks are driving home at the 5 o'clock hour, maybe had a long, hard day, might not want to be listening to some of the heavy content I tend to have to address. And so we try to lighten it up a little bit. And we're going to put the phone number up matter of fact, we can go ahead and put that phone number up now, gentlemen. And if a caller would like to participate in today's program as we discuss communism, American style, and a part of the focus that I'm going to get into today is and I alluded to it earlier, the fact that leaders unite and conquerors divide. And the left in this nation never, ever misses an opportunity to split this nation. And you look at whether it's Jews, whether it's gypsies, whether it's Slavs, whether it's, many people don't know that in China, there's 55 ethnic groups, 55 ethnic groups now. And people like to talk about America as having been a nation that has dominated others. And no one ever talks that China went to war with all of the provinces, the five major areas in China, and united. And they act like they united China by a democratic vote. They united China with blood. And so now, of course, this is many, many years ago, but still, they were created that way. All nations were created that way. And so, but since the Western world is an open society, believes in the rule of law, those that want to attack the Western world attack it in a way that they would never attack China, would never attack the Soviet Union, would never attack any communist totalitarian that's out and outright with guns, directly communistic, would never attack them in such a way, because in the way that you attack a free society, and they take it right out of Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky taught these communists here in America that one of the things you do is you make your opponent live up to their book of rules. And so, and then there have been times when really that was a legitimate tactic, as in case in point, India and England, because England had no legitimate claim to any of these far off colonies. And so what they did was they said, well, oh, you believe in rule of law? So they studied the law and they used that against them and embarrassed them into doing the right thing. And so you have that similar tactic in America. Now, why would not someone, say in the Ukraine, try to embarrass Putin into doing the right thing? Why? Because he's not a part of the Western tradition. And in the Western tradition is the only tradition in which you can get away with that. In the communist tradition, which is direct communism, meaning with guns, tanks, troops, you can't cite any rule of law because communism respects no law. Only in the Western world is there a respect. In spite of the fact that there are imperfections, there is still an underlying, there's a foundation there. As imperfect as the human beings are that have to implement it, wise men laid a very good, solid foundation. And that foundation, they used that foundation against us. And see, another great man once said that the Constitution was not a suicide pact. And I believe that man was Abraham Lincoln. And so you have this idea that people will come against a free nation, a nation that has a set of rules, a nation that has standards, and being that all human beings are not going to meet up to a standard. As a matter of fact, the very foundation of Christianity is the fact that as a Christian, you can't meet the standard. That's the foundation of Christianity. You can't meet it. So Jesus had to meet it for you. And if you get into heaven, it's an act of grace that none of us are deemed worthy of our own merit, but that is the grace of God. There's a way for us to get there. And so that's the humility in the Christian tradition. And that same humility, that same reverence for law, that same looking to a higher power, that's what animates this whole society. And to the communist mind, they treat us like we're chumps and that we're weak, and they're in their mind, oh, wow, that's what they believe? Well, we'll just take advantage of that. And so we have all throughout this nation now, it's being torn asunder. We're being attacked on all fronts. And several of these areas we've covered at the education, the communications area, all of the cultural institutions where you have the church, you have education, you have media, you have the Hollywood filmmaking industry, you have the advertising industry. All of these are the institutions that create the culture. And across the board, they're saying that everything decent, everything historically that was a pillar of this nation, They are attacking all of these things. And this is one of the things that's one of the hallmarks of all communist totalitarian regimes. They take control over all these institutions. And so, and again, as I've said earlier, these people, they never rest. And on our side, we sort of take things for granted. And so even when some of the most successful current communists of our nation, Barack Obama and David Axelrod and Obama, Axelrod and Bill Ayers, when these men went to wealthy patrons to say, well, we want to start a foundation for education, these wealthy, conservative, Republican, retired men, some nice young men, you want to do something for education. And so they wrote them a $50 million check. And they take this $50 million check, and which is money that is generated, the generosity that's generated by free markets, by capitalism, by the intelligent and purposeful application of capital so that it can replicate itself, so that many can be fed and clothed and have successful lives. They take that 50 million and then they go on the attack to attack that very structure that built this nation. Because the one thing they don't want is not that they don't want some sort of structure. It's not that they don't want people to have some sort of a job. They want to be in control of it without earning it. And this is the thing that many people that try to fight against communism, this is the one thing that they miss. There's an assumption that these people sincerely believe their communistic statements, that they sincerely believe that they want to help the little guy. They say with their lips that they want to help the little guy. But I've never seen, in looking at all the communists or totalitarian, and I don't care whatever you want to call them, it could be fascist Italy, it could be Imperial Japan, it could be Nazi Germany, it could be Pol Pot, it could be Mao, it could be Stalin, Lenin, whoever. There's never been one where they took over after killing millions, well over 100 million people if you add all of these murders up. Okay, it's called democide, which is murder by government. You add them up, and if you add in abortions, it would be way more than that. It would be double that if you add in abortions. But just out and out murders, starving to death 10 million in the Ukraine. The tens of millions that died in the work camps. They literally were worked and not fed until they just literally dropped dead. People that were just summarily shot. Pol Pot shot 1/3 of his country. 1/3. In some cases, all you had to do was have on a pair of glasses. The assumption was if you wore glasses, that meant you were a reader. And if you were a reader, that meant you had a mind of your own. And you were not fit to be a communist because you could not be controlled. And so, hence, you were a threat. And so a bullet right in your glasses. That's the ugly nature of communism. Now, American style communism, what they call progressivism, by definition is communism without the guns and bullets, but communism where we control your education, dumb you down after a couple of generations. Communism where we erode the morality, communism where we attack Christianity. And notice they don't attack Islam, they attack Christianity. They're building footbaths in the airport in Minnesota. Now, not building is doing it now, already built them. So that Muslim cab drivers at the airport, when it's the prayer time, they can go, and this is a public money, a public institution, they can go and perform their ablution and say their prayers. Now, in anything having to do with Christianity, they trot out separation of church and state. And so it's not an attack on religion. It's an attack on a specific religion, Christianity. the primary religion of the free world, of the Western world, because the nations of the world that are dominated by Islam, they don't believe in freedom. They believe in submission. Submission to the will of God, or submission to the will of Allah. And the will of Allah is determined by the guy who has the most guns. So, again, this is the insidious nature of communism. And the American style is step, step, step. It's not bring the guns out right away like the Bolsheviks did in 1917 and start shooting people. It's, again, go back to Lenin. Give me control of your young, and in one generation, I will control your country. And so the teachers' unions, the things they are teaching, they're dumbing down. I found out recently that back in 2006, they did away with the need when you take the SAT for you to know what something as simple as a metaphor is. A metaphor. And this was done away with in 2006. And next year, they're going to do away with the need for you to know how to write an essay. And so in an era where kids are texting and everything is shorthand, now they're saying, well, you don't have to write an essay. So people are not going to know even how to use the English language. And so when the meaning of words get twisted, as the elders die off, who's going to be able to correct the people? And so you're going to end up with a two-tier society, not a three-tier, no middle class. There'll be the ruler, and then there'll be the underclass. And so the middle class is being destroyed. And the thing that the communists in this country are doing is they are doing this right in your face, and they're telling you, well, this is the result of capitalism. Capitalism can't work. Capitalism is built on greed. And they have 1,000 excuses why it can't work, and it's all the fault of the capitalists. And being that education is dumbed down and people don't think twice, people hear and accept because they're in such a hurry. All this, everything, the mind is moving so fast from this to this to this, all with some sort of entertainment value, not with something that's calm and peaceful and a thought-provoking value. And so this erosion has been happening for decades. And so these pillars that built this nation, that uphold this nation, even in a time when this nation went from a starter nation to world predominance, the average American back during the time when we were winning World War II and putting men on the moon and doing all these things, the average American had an 8th grade education. And now, today, the average American, they want you to spend 8 years just in college studying nothing. And so come out with $200,000 worth of debt. And then, of course, the government comes along and says, we forgive your debt. And everyone applauds. And, oh, Obama's great. Democrats are great. And so it's like the story of Esau in the Bible. And a book people need to get familiar with. A lot of wisdom in here. These things, nothing is new. Nothing under the sun is new. That's even in here. And so Esau sold his birthright to his brother in order to satisfy his immediate need. Communism, folks, wearing people down, not with a gun, dumbing down your education, making the spiritual irrelevant with all the force of education from kindergarten, the cartoons that they feed you, everything. Government is your friend. The businessman is your enemy. And so communism, American style. And let's put that phone number up, Akil, and let some of the audience members give us a call here. And some of the other things I want to share with you as we discuss American style communism. We're living in a time when the map of the world is being changed. And this is not an accident. This is not an accident, okay? You've had communists that have been in this nation since the 30s and 40s, and this is planned out. This is planned out. And you take Obama, one of his primary mentors was Frank Marshall Davis. His Communist Party card number was 47544. That's a term people just throw. Oh, he's a card carrying communist. People just throw that term out when someone says or acts in a kind of a stupid, naive way of believing that communism is some sort of utopia. And there's quite the contrary when you look at the evidence. And so some of these people, they sound so stupid. I think it was Khrushchev referred to them as useful idiots. But they don't think they're idiots. They think you and I are the idiots. They think they're right. And so these people, they didn't just pop up overnight. Now, there's a connection here. Valerie Jarrett, Obama's consigliere, David Axelrod, Obama's hatchet man. See, hatchet man used to be a bad thing. Now, my radio name is Brother Craig, the hatchet man. So I'm going to make being a hatchet man a good thing, okay? Because my double-edged hatchet is going straight after these communists. But Axelrod was known as a hatchet man in the bad sense of crafting lies, dirty tricks, going after anyone that Barack Obama ever had to run for office against. He never really had to run up until he ran. The first time he had competition was John McCain. In all of his other elections, they were able to take out everyone. And really, even when they ran against McCain and when they ran against Mitt Romney, they were able to take out many of the competitors on the Republican side so that the choice to face Obama was the choice that the Democrats wanted. They preferred McCain over any of the others in 2008, and they preferred Mitt Romney over any of the others in the most recent election. And so this same thing. So this was one of David Axelrod's functions as Obama's hatchet man. But now, what you may be surprised to learn, okay, that these people have been carefully nurtured. All right, and Frank Marshall Davis was as I said, was a communist, and he believed in fundamental change. In 1940, and I'm going to read a little bit of this to you folks. In 1940, he was involved in one of the worst communist fronts, the American Peace Mobilization. See, they always give themselves these nice sounding names. Now, today when they organize and mobilize, they just call themselves the Communist Party USA. But back in the 1940s, they couldn't get away with that. So they were the American Peace Mobilization. Well, this was one of the most seditious organizations ever. They wanted to stop America from entering the war against Hitler. Why? Because Hitler had signed a non-aggression pact with Stalin. And the American communists, being loyal Soviet patriots who literally swore allegiance to Russia and saluted Stalin. And so in 1944, the congressional report listed Frank Marshall Davis's involvement with this group. And also, he was tied to a fellow Chicagoan named Robert Taylor. Robert Taylor is the grandfather of Valerie Jarrett. Valerie Jarrett is currently Barack Obama's senior advisor. She's the one that convinced Obama on 3 separate occasions to call off the attack that got Osama bin Laden. And after the third time, wiser heads around Obama convinced him that, hey, we have him, you better get him. If you don't get him, there's going to be a lot of blowback on you. And so, but it was not this chest thumping, me Rambo, the story they tried to tell after the fact. A 10-year effort of a lot of people to get him, predating the Obama presidency. And then after those 10 years pay off and they have the man, Obama has to be told 1 time no, 2 times no, 3 times no. Finally, a 4th time, SEAL Team 6 went in and got the job done. But Valerie Jarrett, born in Iran. Her parents were involved in a teaching group in Iran. And also I should note that when the so-called Arab Spring was running through the Middle East, the one nation that Obama protected from any fallout from the Arab Spring was Iran. That little young girl that bled out in the street, and they caught it on video, and it went viral around the world. And in the world, there was uproar to do something about the regime in Iran, which they used Twitter and all this social media in Egypt to get rid of Mubarak, an American ally. They used the same tactic to get rid of Gaddafi in Libya, who had recently given up his nuclear program, thanks to the Bush administration. And so, which sends the message that if you cooperate with America and you give up your nukes, what's the reward you get? You get killed. That's the message it sends. And so no one else in that region will ever do that again. And also, while I'm on there, I'm going to get right back to this, but while I'm on the subject of giving up your nukes, the Ukraine gave their nukes up to the Clinton administration. And so now that Putin wants to go into the Ukraine, and the Ukrainians, remember the 10 million people that were starved to death, they couldn't eat the food that they grew. They grew it and couldn't eat it. Starved to death, 10,000 per day were dying. They remember this. And these people do not want to go back to that. But because they gave their nukes up to the United States of America in exchange for a promise that the United States of America would defend them if they ever needed it, now they need it, there's no defense. And so this is, and towards the end of the program, as we wrap up, or we might have to get to this next week, but we'll get into how the map is changing, and the fact that it's not Obama incompetence, it's planned, it's purposeful, and it just galls me that there's not a single Republican that has the courage to say that. All I ever hear is that it's mind-boggling. It's crazy. It's the level of incompetence. Oh, this Obama just doesn't get it, and he's whooped your behind twice, and he doesn't get it. Oh, my Republican friends, we have a lot to learn. But back to Frank Marshall Davis and this group around the connections from the 40s and 50s, from actual communism, some of it even predating the 40s, right on up to the current occupants of the White House and the team he has around him. So you have literally Frank Marshall Davis, Obama's mentor, working with the literal relatives of Valerie Jarrett in the Communist Party circles in the 1940s. Now, David Axelrod, he was mentored by the Cantor family. Now, David Cantor, his family, they have Soviet communist roots that run deep. His family, prior to moving to Chicago, had lived in Moscow. And his father, Harry Cantor, was the official translator of Lenin's writings. Harry Cantor, the father of David Cantor, the mentor to David Axelrod. I mean, this is just, you can't make this stuff up, folks. Harry, he was secretary of the Boston Communist Party and ran for governor of Massachusetts on the Communist Party ticket, and was literally an employee of Joseph Stalin. And of course, here in America, the Democrats, they called him Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe. All right. Google it. Folks, sometimes you gotta do a little bit of your own research, and you can just say, well, yeah, the hatchet man's telling me the truth. Just check out a few. You don't have to check out everything, but just to give yourself some assurance that what you hear from your friendly neighborhood hatchet man is good and accurate information. But now, Frank Marshall Davis was writing communist propaganda for the Packing House Workers Union and teaching in the communist school, the Abraham Lincoln School. Harry Cantor was one of the board members. Now, You have Davis mentoring Obama. You have Cantor mentoring Axelrod. You have Robert Taylor was the grandfather of Jarrett. And then you have Vernon Jarrett, the future father-in-law of Valerie Jarrett. And so all these people have actual communist ties. Vernon Jarrett even wrote an article. His Vernon Jarrett's ties were not only to communists, but to Muslims and Arabs. And here's the article that Vernon Jarrett wrote back in 1979. Will Arabs back ties to blacks with cash? And this is, well, it's too small for you to see. But one of the things that they did was they got very wealthy Saudis to pay for the college educations of black Americans. And they got them to back black Americans who were working in the prison system to recruit Muslims here in America. And see, now this is an old tactic of the Soviets because they analyze a nation. They say, well, blacks are the underclass in America, so that's the weak point. So that's who you go after. And that if you go after them, they will be in the vanguard of the destruction of the current status quo. And then you get rid of all that, and your communist utopia can rise. Now, they say utopia in order to convince the proletariat that they're doing this for them. The reality is they're doing it for themselves because they can't go out and invent a product, build a business, or write a book, do something useful that would put them up and top so they could be in the esteem of the people in a legitimate way. So they have to take a gun and take it. And they have to have a justification for that. So they don't say we're doing this because we're power hungry. They say we're doing this because we don't want to see you living like that. And then once they take over, how do you live? You live worse. You live worse. And so this proletariat revolution, this vanguard that black Americans were supposed to be a part of, current communist Van Jones, in my research, I learned that his birth name was Anthony Jones. The man changed his name to Van because he wants to be a part of the vanguard. Okay, Van is short for vanguard. He wants to be in the vanguard of the communist takeover and overthrow of this nation. And again, it never occurs to this man that you live in the land of the free, the home of the brave, a land of opportunity, the land of milk and honey, the land where if you would apply yourself under the principles of free enterprise, you can rise to whatever height you choose. But since this person either has no talent or no confidence in himself to develop any talent, he and people like him, bullies that want the power anyway, these type of people gravitate to communism. And if you just substitute the words Islam for communism, it's the exact same thing today. It's the exact same thing. These people believe in domination. They don't believe in any type of freedom. You're not free to have any faith of your choice. Right now, there are Christians rotting in Islamic jails all around the world. Now, in America or in the Western world, there are no Muslims in jail just for being Muslim. If they're there for bringing violence. And so this is a part of the communistic mentality. And remember, folks, that World War I, World War II, the Arab world chose the wrong side to unite with. And so they chose to unite with the forces of darkness. And as a matter of fact, the Ottoman Empire was lost after World War I because they chose the wrong side. And so And one of the animating reasons that made them so eager was the fact that there's a hatred that animates Islam towards Judaism. And on the side of the Germans, you had that same hatred. And so they had a fellowship. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so they've always been bosom buddies. And then partially because of a hatred of Jews, which is another way of saying envy of successful people. And then another reason is because they believe in taking power directly, i.e. communism, not earning it, i.e. free enterprise. And so this is what has been going on with these people in America that surround Obama. And I have a few more notes here that I want to share with you. One of them, going back to these communists that surround Obama today. Percy Sutton is a person who has been interviewed many times and who has stated that he and Dr. Khalid al-Mansour from Texas was one of the principal advisors to one of the richest men in the world. And it was an Arab prince, Alawid bin Talal. And they convinced this Arab prince to take an interest in and finance Barack Obama's education. And so here you have his mentor, a communist, his financiers, communism with Islam thrown in, and the people around him, Valerie Jarrett, David Axelrod, all of these people, their connections go way back, even to the point of, as I stated earlier, in the case of Cantor being the official translator for Lenin. I mean, you can't have communist roots any deeper than that. You just can't have it. And so we have modern, here in 2014, we have politicians literally afraid to call Barack Obama a communist. They're afraid. Literally, they're afraid to call David Axelrod a communist. They're afraid to call Valerie Jarrett a communist. But these people, their parents, their mentors, they're all communists. All of them. And Barack Obama even said himself in his own autobiography. And as a matter of fact, if these people are too lazy to read it, they could get the audio version. I've heard it in his own words, him reading it in the audio version of his own book, that when he went to college, he naturally gravitated to the socialist and Marxist professors. Why? Frank Marshall Davis, his mentor. I'm going to tell you the truth, folks. I think Frank Marshall Davis is actually his physical father. We won't get all into, these were people that were into all types of pornography and perversion. Barack Obama's mother, Frank Marshall Davis, Barack Obama's grandfather, this is what they were into. And Obama looks just like Frank Marshall Davis. And my belief is that the grandfather, well, it's a known fact that the grandfather asked Davis to mentor Obama from the time that he was about 10, thinking that Barack Hussein Obama Sr., who was the man who married Obama's mother, thinking that, well, that was the father, but that he was off in Africa with his other wives and his other children, and later on ended up dying, drunk driving, and died in an auto accident. And so had this man to mentor him, thinking that he, the grandfather, and the grandmother, being white in a white community, that Obama would need a black man to mentor him so that he could figure out how to be the type of man that he had to grow up and matriculate in black society. So he had Frank Marshall Davis do it. I think that the reason is deeper than that's part of it, but that also that was his actual blood father. And so the but that's enough on that one. I mean, because that right there, and you throw in Bill Ayers and Valerie Jarrett. I mean, Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn, and you get the picture that these are not people that believe in the American way. It's just not. And so what we have with this American style communism, it comes to a head in a paper written by a husband-wife team in the 1960s. I believe it was 1966 they wrote this paper. They were professors at Columbia University, Frances Fox Piven and Cloward. I forget her husband Cloward's first name, but they discovered that there were a lot of people that were taking the war on poverty seriously and were actually trying to help the poor escape poverty. And what they wanted to do was use the poor as a battering ram, which is what communists do. The communists use the poor. They call them useful idiots. They keep them angry. They don't want them to rise and come up out of poverty. You and I would want that. A Christian would want that. A conservative would want that. A decent human being would want that, would want the poor to matriculate up and out of poverty and no longer need welfare, no longer need food stamps, no longer live in the ghetto. But of course, when we make efforts to try to help them do that, such as, good schools, free choice of school, we're demonized as hating the poor and wanting to destroy education and wanting to deny them an education. All total lies, all that's the communist way. You demonize anyone that will believe in anything having to do with freedom. And so we're on the side of freedom and they're on the side of slavery. And so they want the poor to be slaves to their appetites. They want them to be slaves to ignorance, and they want them to be tools in the hands of those that would destroy America. And so this Cloward-Piven strategy of manufactured crisis was designed to purposely overload America with more demands than could possibly be met. And so what they did, they taught this in universities, and it went to universities all around the nation. It started in Columbia, and these social workers are taught to go out and recruit people to get on welfare and get on food stamps and to just have a sense of entitlement to these programs. And now you have this new one, Obama scam. So people have a sense that I'm entitled to the free services of other human beings who've spent a lot of money and time and energy to get an education, to be a doctor, a nurse, a provider of pharmaceuticals, etc. And so their idea was that if you just get more demands, get the poor angry, get them mad, don't let them get up out of poverty, let them fester in their poverty, make them angry. And then they will make more demands, and the nice, good Christian people will just backpedal and promise and give and give. Why? No one wants to be called mean. No one wants to be called racist. No one wants to be called selfish. And so they give and give and give. And at some point, the entire system is going to collapse. There's going to be chaos. And then in sweeps the government authorities, and voila. Communism, American style. That's how they'll do it. And so this plan has been implemented, and we've been talking about it for 5 weeks now, and we're right up here at the end of our 5th week. We've got next week to wrap the program up. We'll get a little more in depth next week into the international implications of it. In the meantime, it's been great being here. I want to thank you for your viewership. And I want to encourage you to check us out. Google Brother Craig the Hatchet Man sometimes. We have an internet podcast. Tomorrow night, we're going to have the screenwriter and producer of the movie Heaven is for Real. And that'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. In the meantime, I want to thank our Keel and the crew in here for being our engineers and producers tonight. I want to thank you out there. We want to thank the fine folks at Comcast. And we're going to see you here to wrap the program up this year. Next week, 9 o'clock tonight. Have a wonderful evening, Richmond.